Good evening. I'd like to call the November 4th work session of the Jackson County Board of Education to order.
I'm so sorry. I had my alarm. I didn't even know I had it on.
No apology needed, Ms. Whaley. That was, I was ahead of time. That was good.
No, I don't know why I had it set, honestly.
All right, before we get any farther in the ditch, we'll get going. All members are here. We'll go ahead and get started with superintendent's comments. Dr. Howard.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Clarsey. Thanks to those of you who are here. We have great staff. I want to just make you aware that our finance team is at GASBO. Miss Anna Dodge is not here, and she serves on the executive committee for GASBO, which is an honor for her in our district. So they have provided the updates, but wanted you to know why they're not here. We've had a very busy couple of weeks, and we appreciate everyone being here. The only real item I have specifically is a review of the FY23 calendar. Just want you to know that our process has been pretty standard in terms of sending out a calendar for our principals to review. They talk with their leadership teams and teachers about it, and then we share it with our teacher advisory council. And so this is our recommended calendar for the 22-23 school year. Doesn't seem like we can get away from starting sometime in July. We're trying hard, but our school leaders and our teachers really value those breaks every 9 weeks. And so if we try to get first semester done before the holidays, that it pushes us back. So that's the recommended calendar. One thing I draw your attention to is we have asked for our conference dates to be put back in. So we have one fall conference date and one spring conference date. That's an early release date for our elementary schools, and we really expect 100% participation, and our teachers work hard to make sure that they work with parents. So outside of that, that's the only real comment. I want to thank Mr. Farmer and the transportation department. We did have a bit of a situation today, but they handled it beautifully, and our insurance is taking care of handling that, and we're grateful that we didn't have more damage, but appreciate it very much. And I'd like to turn it over to our teaching and learning department. Miss Fran Dundor has been with us now for almost 3 weeks, so she's going to share with some things with us. And so, Fran, I'll turn it over to you, and I'll navigate here, and you just tell me if you need me to move slides or change things.
I will, Dr. Howard. Thank you. If you'd open up that first item is, if you'd open up the teaching and learning goals and priorities item, that is a PowerPoint slide that I shared in Adobe in a PDF. So if you'll scroll down to that first slide, I'd like to share with the board and this team where I began when I came into the district. One of my first tasks was to reach out to our principals, our APIs, and our instructional coaches with a survey. And what I asked in that survey was, what is working? What is happening in the Department of Teaching and Learning where you feel most supported? Because I want to make sure that those supports that have been put in place before I got here continued. And there were some strong supports and strong feedback. And there is a lot to celebrate that's going on in teaching and learning. And I also asked them, where do you need additional support? So how does this department wrap around the schools, the principals, and that leadership and provide support for them? And what I have presented in this slide is, I've also shared this with principals at their principal meeting this week. Was it this week or last week? It feels like, okay, time is flying when you're having fun. But this is a highlight and a summary of their feedback. And I think it's important for this board to see what I feel these principals have charged me with and tasked our department with. It's important work, and they're very passionate about it, and that was very exciting for me to see. So just in summary, we've had lots of feedback about focusing on literacy in this district from K to 12. And we're going to dig into that work and talk about what that might look like in Jackson County. They've asked for us to return to a strong performance culture. And as I've talked with principals about that, what they mean, we've had a global pandemic. Every school in this country has paused for 2 years. And I think our principals feel compelled that it's time to press play again, and in pressing play to return to some of those strategies and behaviors and monitoring protocols for curriculum and instruction that we might have taken our hands off of because it was the right thing to do in a crisis. And so they've asked that we return to some of that focused curriculum work. They've asked for unified assessments across all grade bands from K to 12. So they want a common formative practice whereby all 6 of our elementary schools would be able to look at literacy data or look at math data with an assessment schedule that all principals are following, and allow us to have some cross conversations from elementary, middle, and high about student performance on those assessments, leading into those higher stakes state performances by which we are all held accountable. And then they asked as well for prioritizing standards so that we go back to some work that gives teachers a chance to re-see the standards, to look at them again. And I'm going to share some CPI and some FTE data with you in just a moment that will help really open up and expose why that's extremely important for us in this county right now. But to prioritize rigor and standards that are aligned to, or work that is aligned to those Georgia Standards of Excellence. So here's what we did next. Teaching and Learning came back from that principals meeting and that work with principals, and we sat down and we said, let's get busy. What do they need us to do? And the first thing that we're going to do is we've asked our principals to go back to their buildings and begin the work of digging into what data they have collected. And that we know right now is going to look different by each school, hence why they're asking us to return to some systematic common assessment protocols. But I ask our principals to go back to their buildings and to say, where is my school? How do I know it? And what am I going to do next? Those 3 questions, I think, are an appropriate starting point for us post-pandemic to reorient ourselves to see where we are. They're going to come back with that data in January, and we're going to begin that assessment cycle, and I'll share more about that with you at a later date as I have a chance to carve that out with our principals and our teaching and learning team. We also began a second semester professional learning plan, and that plan really is driven by the feedback that came from that survey. They have asked for support in early literacy in regards to guided reading. We are piloting some very exciting guided reading work and phonics work in our early literacy program, which the teachers are super excited about. And so the other principals have come on board and said, we all need that, and we all need that right now. And I agree with them. They absolutely need those fundamental components of a solid reading program in an elementary school for that early access. So we're going to support that with professional learning. All schools will be piloting it. We've placed an order for every school to have access to those guided reading materials and those phonics supports, as well as word study. We are going to begin some professional learning with 612 for their content areas to embed the literacy standards that exist in our science and our CTAE courses, our social studies courses, but to embed the work of really helping teachers see how to help students access those standards in a biology class or a mathematics class. They're not a reading teacher, and we don't have any expectation for them to become a reading teacher, but they are content specialists, and students need access to literacy and those skills in every content area. So we're going to begin that work, and we're going to also, this was the secondary instructional design was work that was done under Mr. Nicholson's supervision and support, and that we're relaunching that secondary instructional design. It's solid, research-based, best practice in instruction with an inquiry or phenomenon-based method approach to secondary classrooms. And so we're going to relaunch that because it got launched and then we got shut down. So they haven't really had a chance to have professional learning in regards to that work. And then we're going to pull our curriculum design teams back together because we know that the work lives with the teacher, and the teacher is the one who is going to be boots on the ground, meeting kids where they are and doing that work. And so we're going to begin unpacking those standards again with them. We have brand new math standards coming out next year, and Dr. Warwick has been in buildings supporting that work. But we also need to back up and revisit the standards we're currently teaching to make sure that we're teaching them at the level of the standard, so that the performance that we see is an accurate reflection of our students' work against that expectation, and that teaching is occurring at a high level in all classrooms. We'll look back at units that currently exist and revisit mapping and pacing. And some of you who've been in this business a really long time, it might sound like I think it's 1998. I don't, but this is good work. And I think it's the work that our principals are craving and that they've asked for us to do. And then we will begin to form those common formative assessments around that. When I found this document, before my first week here, essentially, board members, what they have asked us for is to return to the standards of excellence that you established several years ago that have been interrupted by a global pandemic. They've asked us to revisit those quality service standards for assessment, for instruction, in curriculum planning, and in creating an academic experience that both provides personalization, because I think what this county has been able to accomplish in personalized learning is so impactful. I have seen it in other districts, and in other districts, students get personalized experiences by being put on a computer and self-paced. And my first visit to Jackson County, it was very evident that that is not what you're doing here. You are giving kids authentic experiences. And what we are going to attempt to do moving forward is build back the foundations under that work that we had to press pause on in a pandemic. So I say all of that to say, first, are there any questions on that? Anybody like to?
Well, I wanted to ask about what we've been doing with mapping, and evaluation. Where are we with that? Because I know that there was a group in the state that we were trying to get approval so that we could use that and not the state.
We're piloting that, correct? We're a district that is part of that pilot.
So that's part of the pilot, so we won't do the other state testing, or we will still do state testing?
We will currently still do the state testing because we're part of, as well as the other counties that were able to be part of that pilot, in beta mode. They're testing the efficacy of that as a replacement for the milestones, but it is not a replacement in this current year.
Yeah, but didn't they give us weren't we given some time frame before when we thought maybe that would be the time that we could leave the state testing and we could go to what we're doing?
So what Ms. Tuttle was referring to is about to show comparability.
Yeah.
But the fact that we didn't have our CCRPI and
Sure.
that way on, so
Sure.
we're kind of back.
So
This year would have been the year.
We're
Yeah.
right.
This is the year we show comparability, and then next year we will be able to start exploring some of those.
Yeah.
Right.
So hopefully that's still in the works, and we'll
Yes.
be able to do that
Yes, ma'am.
in the near future then further.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, all right, good.
This year is the year where we do the both, and then the potential is that we would not maintain fund after
Yeah.
this year.
Okay.
That's our hope. That's our hope.
Hopefully that's going to fly for us.
Yeah.
We've had 2 years without testing, without.
That's sure, which really messed us up. And just refresh my memory, like how many different systems is it, Liz? I knew that it was about 20.
When we started, it was 13 systems. I think that was their beginning pilot, was 13 systems in Georgia.
Yeah.
And so it's
We
grown to
were one of the first, I know.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's exciting work.
It is.
Very exciting work, and I think would be a weight off of our students in terms of, and for our teachers to be able to measure that growth from beginning to middle to end
Absolutely.
versus, the milestones tends to be the autopsy at the end of versus the checkups along the way, right?
Yeah.
And those common formative assessments will help with that. That map data will help us drive instruction
Sure.
across the school year.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Good, and I'm excited about that too. So we'll have to see how we do this year and move forward with that.
I really think the state has begun to shift their thought process in that as well, just because they've actually begun a different kind of formative, very similar to MAP, that they rolled out, that they have some districts piloting this year. So we actually had a survey that they just asked our school test coordinators to answer this week. That was, one of the questions had to do with what other type of formative assessment do you use? And MAP was like top of the list, which is great. But you don't know what they'll decide to do in the end, but hopefully they're seeing the value in that, so.
So all of that next step data and to have that feedback from principals leads into this next slide. Martha and I met, I will say this week, I think it was this week, Martha, but it could have been last week, to talk about CPI and FTE data as we have hit sign-off time after our October FTE count. And I think it's significant, board members, for us to pay attention to the bookends of this graph. You have total years of experience of the teachers that we serve in this county. We have 770 total certified staff members. And that's an incredible number of teachers that we serve. What's significant about that is 129 of them, 17% of those teachers, are first year. And 28% of those teachers are 21 plus years, which means we have teachers brand new to the education profession, many of them who probably did their student teaching virtually during COVID, who have not had the experience of the mentorship that comes with being in a school, shoulder to shoulder with a veteran, who can show those teachers the ropes that many of us learned, and that our principals are saying we need to go back to those ropes. Those are the ropes: common formative assessments, aligned curriculum and instruction, rigor that matches the level of the standard. Those brand new teachers haven't had access in that way by not being able to student teach in a school. And then 28% of our teachers within a decade could leave the profession if they chose. And that means that we are looking at an entirely different demographic in terms of years of experience. So I think that's significant for the board to consider. Our next chart is enrollment numbers, FTE sign-off for 2021 elementary schools. And this is 3-year trend data for you to review so that you can see enrollment across the past 3 years across each of our elementary schools. You'll notice that Gum Springs has had significant growth for this October FTE count over last October's count, and North Jackson Elementary as well, significant growth, although we're seeing spots of growth in other places. West Jackson has had some growth, but the Gum Springs growth, North Jackson growth is exponential. And the next slide is the same data, but with a secondary. And so just to give you an idea to take a look at Jackson County, this is no surprise to you. You're watching this growth happen but when Mr. Ted gives his report later, we're going to talk about what we're doing to meet the needs of that growth. But that is where we see those trends happening. That means we're adding even more teachers. We're adding even more classrooms. And so the sooner that we get back to a systematic approach to some of those foundations, the more cohesive and collective that curriculum work is. Any questions about those two? Okay. And then the next piece of data that I have for you is just an assessment update, and there are a couple of pieces here. The first one I think has been shared already, so this is just a revisiting of that advanced placement data. This also includes some international baccalaureate data. I think you saw this in August. And so I wanted to put that in your hands again, because what I also have for you is a trend data for the last 3 years for advanced placement. The AP, the College Board, is very private with their data. We get to see ours. We don't get to see anyone else's. So it would be nice if one day they decide to show us how we compare with other schools and districts our size, how we compare with our RESA. So the other link, Dr. Howard, thank you, is a 3-year trend data. And this data, I think, is important for us to look at, because what it shows us is that we are losing ground with our advanced placement students, and we have to tighten the reins so that we're able to provide, and this goes back to that consistent expectation across all of the schools that we serve, across all of the students that we serve. Students on the east side of the county deserve the same experiences and opportunities and rigor levels as students on the west side of the county. And so this is just about equity and access. We do have a couple of places, biology at East Jackson, comprehensive, and calculus. Biology for sure, and English Lit and Comp, we have seen gains over our own scores across the past 3 years. But for the most part, we have seen either a status quo or a dip in that data. And so even, and that's just, was new to us in July. We haven't received any state release data since then. So that's just another call for our highest performers. And those tend to be the students who are in your advanced placement classes, are those students who are our highest achievers, are losing ground on themselves right now. And they deserve an opportunity for us to help them pull that in and support those principals in doing that. Any questions?
Well, I do want to ask.
Yes, ma'am.
Did I interrupt you to say something? No? Okay. And I know when we started this IB program that we anticipated it was going to start slow. And I guess my question is, what are we doing to encourage more students to be involved in this program so that
With the IB
we'll
program?
yes, that we'll get the most out of this program for everybody.
Well, part of that starts with recruitment at the schools, and I know if we look back at our strategic plan, what we said we were going to do is begin this program at the high school level, but push down into the middle school to see if there's room for growth in that middle school, in our middle schools, and I think that's our next step, is to begin, because you'll have your first cohort graduating this year. So we have 4 years of this IB program. I think it's probably time for us to explore what it may look like to push IB into the middle schools, to continue to grow it.
Yeah, we just gotta get the things straightened out middle school first.
If you build it, they will come, right?
And to add to that, we do have Miss Rebecca Grogan, listen to me, I was going to Maysville, Branham, who is an assistant principal at West Middle, who went for middle years training this summer. So they are starting to prepare that work, because your recruitment does have to start in middle school. So it's going to take some time.
And just like any of our programs, CTAE programs, any of those programs that are dependent upon enrollment, and IB would be an example of that recruitment eventually has to back into those middle programs.
So-
Other questions?
I
Yes, sir.
do. I told Dr. Howard just a minute ago, I spent some time with Mr. Wester today, and we talked about this very thing, Ms. Wheeler, and I guess really what does it look like? How do we get sixth graders? How do we encourage parents at the fifth grade level and let them know? It's kind of like being a softball pitcher. If you're not pitching at sixth grade, you're not pitching in high school. So if you're not doing this in middle
That's
school,
right.
you're not
That's a great
doing it in high
analogy.
school.
So this will be, it will involve a lot of hands on deck. And so part of this is recruitment. The students at the middle school first have to know what our offerings look like. But those advanced content teachers are going to have to be brought into the conversation even in the fifth grade. I think our fifth grade advanced content teachers, our fourth grade teachers have to be brought into the loop in terms of what IB is, how the instruction is different, how the thinking is different. It's a completely different approach to the way we teach students. And I think that we begin with exploring or working in those advanced content courses for recruitment, but also for alignment. Because if the advanced content classes are where we're feeding international baccalaureate students, and it's the same with advanced placement, then we need to be consistent in our approach to teaching those students. The rigor level, I'll go back to that original slide, has to be up here. The expectation has to be high in our advanced content courses. If we put a sixth grader in an international baccalaureate class and they've never seen that level of rigor, we will lose them, and it's unfair to them. Does that answer that question? Okay.
I'm curious to watch this kind of change and unfold as we go forward.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Fran, and I appreciate your explanation there, and would also validate that this is a part of the advisement process as well. And so this is something that's probably going to have to work in tandem with student support services, because we did take all of our middle and high school counselors to Lanier Tech this week so that they were more aware of what's happening in terms of dual enrollment opportunities at the technical side. Same kind of thing's going to happen. Our students are influenced by teachers. Teachers are the highest influence of student choices outside their parents. So our teachers have to understand what those opportunities are to be able to sell it. And a rising tide floats all boats. So
And I sat in, Martha is doing a phenomenal job. She won't like me bragging on her, but guys, I've watched her work with these principals and lead these scheduling meetings, and it is excellence. And one of the conversations that we just had, in fact, was from Danny Wetzer at East Jackson, that our AP programs are driven by teacher popularity. And I mean that in the sense that I know you're a good teacher. I know your classroom is quality, and I want to be in your room. And so those teachers that we put in those seats are part of that recruitment piece as well.
So on the AP testing, 3+ or above, are they mostly 3s? Do we have a lot of 5s?
That is broken down for you in the PowerPoint slide. They are mostly 3s. To answer your, just a quick answer is they are mostly 3s. There are 4s and 5s, but our bulk lands in that 3. Yes, sir.
I would also remind us, and Mr. Hollett, that's a great question. We're almost rebooting again, because the way that test was administered was virtual for the first time, and that was totally different. So even though it's important that we look at this data, we're probably going to want to look at baseline data starting this year again, because really you'd have to go back to 19 to see true baseline data because of the disruption that's happened in the past 2 years. They didn't even administer the test the same way.
Well, and you're right, Dr. Howard. And the year before, I think many of our kids took it on their phones if they chose to. So I think it is important to keep that in mind, that the test changed. You know, all the other tests went away. The College Board said, no, you're taking AP. And so we had multiple choice testing on cell phones if they wanted to take it that way. So it's important to keep in mind.
One other point, just for reference on FTE, just for purposes of power, our numbers in CTAE and vocational were up in the FTE count this year, and dual enrollment too. So that showed in the numbers and in the funding. Those numbers were up as well.
Great.
Good.
Thank you.
Everything's up, but those
Yeah.
numbers.
I think we'll continue to see that trend as well. That's fantastic. So thank you, Fran. And I didn't mean to neglect you, Rodney. This is really important. You've got something to talk about, sir. So share with us.
That is okay. One of the primary responsibilities of the technology department is to continuously assess the security stance of our network from internal and external threats. And this project had actually started before I got here, which was awesome. We replaced approximately half of our wireless access points within the past 6 months, 3 months, I would say. What we would like to ask the board to approve is to allow us to post an RFP to replace the remaining approximately 400 access points. That would replace all of the remaining access points that were manufactured in between 2011 and 2013. So, and many of those, as you'll see in the request, there are end of life and end of support in a couple of months, a month, like 15 days actually, in December. So we'd like to ask for approval to do an RFP and put that out to get the remaining access points replaced to bring us up to current speed so we can shape traffic a little better and improve the security of the network.
Any questions for the board?
Approximately, we're preliminary pricing with installation and everything between $250 and $300, somewhere around in there. That would allow us to replace the rest of the access points and include installation with that, and do some configuration on that as well.
Is it not just unplug and plug back in?
It is not, no, sir.
Not just Cat 5, Cat 6, and plug in and plug right back in?
The new access points are a different manufacturer, so we would need a new mount and everything. They would also need to be configured with the new manufacturer profile and everything. So it would be somewhat of an installation process that would go along with it. So.
Well, there's a lot of that I don't understand all that, but why are we using a different manufacturer?
The current access points that we use are made by Cisco. Cisco, since we purchased those, has bought other companies, and then the new ones that we're buying are Meraki. They are made by Cisco. They're owned by Cisco. It's just a subsidiary of Cisco. They have some increased security features. They also have some new ways of managing traffic that will allow us to basically separate personal devices. It'll allow us to separate iPhones or Chromebooks, and during testing times, we can say, okay, all iPhones are off, and there's no impact on the network during that time. So there are a lot of new features in the new models that we're buying, and that's why we kind of went that direction.
So basically, it's gonna be a safer.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
A much
Yes,
safer
ma'am.
process.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Get this back and load these numbers, and when do you think it will work?
I'd like to put the RFP out this month. Let that stay out, assess the bids that come in, choose a winning bidder in December, and bring it back to you guys in January. That would give us enough time to go through the bids, make sure it includes everything we need, and then bring the approval back to you in January.
So then you could have completed then this school year, is that what you're saying?
Well, as long as supply chain allows them to be delivered, yes, ma'am. We would put those in the second they were in our hands.
Anybody have any other questions? You good? You
I was looking for the one in here earlier, and Josh helped me find it.
You're looking for what?
So that's what he's talking about right there.
Oh, gotcha, okay, all right. Very good.
All right. We have enjoyed having Rodney among us. It's been refreshing to work alongside, so thank you for presenting this, and I will look forward to seeing what we get back. All right, HR and leadership. Mr. Nicholson, you want to kick us off with an overview and what's next?
Good evening. Thank you. That's very loud. I might go out of order so that we don't play a tennis match back and forth here between Ms. Todd and myself, since we have some overlapping items here. But I think actually Fran did a very nice job already talking about enrollment, so that would be a little bit redundant at this point. But you do have the enrollment numbers there for your review that Martha puts together and monitors very closely. And I don't think it is a surprise to anyone that we are continuing to grow. So that is going to be a big part of the conversation. Yeah, sure.
Are any more moves coming from west side, east side, west side? Or are east side kids moving out? And is west side growth?
Actually, the biggest impact on the reduction in enrollment is homeschool. That happened during, and that was actually the largest piece of that anyway, was during COVID, the first year, and then we've had significant this year. I think what I'm worried the most about is that that's gonna flip around, and all of a sudden, they're all gonna come back. So we've, it's been pretty significant.
No, it's great. That's what we're here for. I'm going to jump down, Dr. Howard, if you don't mind, just to the personnel timeline. This is the time of year that we usually share this with you, and just so that you've got a sense of how we proceed. Nothing substantially different than what we've done in the past. Of course, you have some paperwork, some evaluation for Dr. Howard, and I believe you'll discuss your timeline with that, but you have that as probably our number one evaluation that needs to be completed. But then the rest you'll see we have ready the intent transfer forms that we'll go ahead and send that out. I think over the years underneath Dr. Blankenship, we continue to move things a little bit earlier in the year, which was really wise, so that we can try to be on the forefront of the hiring season. So we have those ready to go out. They'll actually go out on the 8th of November, and then we'll get those back on the 19th. Obviously those aren't binding, but if somebody is retiring and they're comfortable letting us know at that point, we get that information. And then as people have different life experiences, their spouse is going to be transferred. It just gives us that preliminary data to start thinking about how many teachers we are going to have to replace from our existing pool of teachers. And then we'll also, in November, we'll start doing our school climate surveys. Those are already ready to go out, and that's a really good pulse check. All of our classified and certified teachers have the opportunity to take that, and we use that data as just one point to just get a pulse check on how things are going and how people feel about leadership, but also the climate of the school. And we use that in our mid-year conferences with our principals, and they use it with their assistant principals as well. And we will be bringing some organizational charts to you. We're going to do that a little bit earlier. Oftentimes we bring those to you in March, but as you look around the room, there are a lot of changes, and then those of us that are here are in different roles. So we want to do that a little bit earlier so that you have a really solid understanding of what our vision is. We can get your feedback for every department. I don't think really there are hardly any departments that won't have some sort of change, but we want to share that with you, answer any questions you have, go back, make any revisions that we need to make, and then bring those back to you in the following month so that when we do get into that hiring season, you're already well-versed on what we're looking for, why we're looking for it, what those positions entail. So that's a little different than what we've done, but I think that'll set us up for the hiring season a little bit better than, especially with all the growth that we're experiencing. And then we also, this is something we started a couple years ago, we'll do our leadership recommendations. Those we'll bring to you in January. And that's the first round of leadership. That's your school leaders and district leaders. And then the following month, we will bring our teacher recommendations to you, with May being that final recommendation. And that's for our teachers that are returning. Obviously, when you start hiring in the spring, and y'all know we've had called board meetings in June and in July to get the teachers, but this is all referring to existing teachers and leaders so that we can be very well poised going into next year, knowing who's going to be where and what our needs are. So, any questions regarding that? Pretty straightforward.
Well, let me just ask this.
Mm-hmm.
I know you said we looked it up. I was thinking last year that it was in December that we were asking for intent forms. So is it like a month earlier this year?
We sent them out in November, but we let them stay open a little bit longer, and we're trying to close them a little bit sooner so that we can, obviously things happen between November and May, but it gives us enough information to determine whether people have already made decisions about they're not going to be coming back for, they already know it. It's not binding, and if something changes, obviously they have to let the principal know, and so then we have a master personnel spreadsheet that's maintained, and so if somebody comes and says, effective the end of this year, I'm going to be resigning, then we add that in, but it's also, one thing that I left out, but it's on the sheet, is those personnel conversations and the point allocations with our principals. And so that's kind of that second level or second tier, because when we get to those meetings, principals have a pretty good understanding of anything that would have changed from the time that we sent out those intent forms to when we sit around the table and talk in January. And then a few other things I want to mention before I turn it over to Ms. Todd. I put a link in here for you. I've shared before about the empowering leaders, and we're really thrilled with the progress that we have. We have, I mentioned we have several cohorts right now, some that are focused on instructional leadership and some are focused on just district leader in general. But we had some people in transportation who wanted to participate, but they can't come before school and they can't come after school because they're routing buses from 5 a.m. to 7 o'clock in the evening with extracurriculars and athletics. And so it was inspired by one of Mr. Farmer's team members. I said, well, what if we did one for the district office? And so floated that out there amongst our directors and said, do you have people in your departments who you might think would be interested in an Aspiring Leaders program? And right now we have about 25 individuals that are, this is all non-instructional, so this is, you've got from your transportation, your facilities, nutrition, and I'm really excited about it because that shows you just the desire for continued leadership. And if people come in, they do an amazing job every day, but they don't really get the opportunity to exercise if they're not in a leadership position. They're focusing on their work, and so it gives them a chance to have some skills, some opportunity with networking. You can see in there what we're doing each month, and it's very much based on John Maxwell and Stephen Covey's work. They'll all get a copy of the book, so we'll really be able to dig into some of those laws of leadership as well as those highly effective practices. So really excited about that, and we'll do those on Fridays, so it'll be during the day. They won't have to compromise their responsibilities in the morning or the afternoon. So very excited about that. So just wanted you to be aware of that. And something I didn't mention is that at the very last board meeting this year, we will have some of our graduates, so to speak, and they'll come and they will do a presentation of sorts. We won't have them all graduate in front of you necessarily, but we'll do that before the meeting, and then we'll have them come do a presentation about their experience. And I'm already, this is right now, it's like, okay, this is small compared to what I want to do with it next year. But it's been very, very refreshing and rewarding work.
Is this like instructor-led or video?
This one, it's all collaboration. So I assign them just small sections of those 2 books, and they're thematically organized. So we talk about building culture through trust and respect. And so we look at some of the irrefutable laws and just make it to where it's thematic enough in an hour that it all ties together, but I give them some tasks, some challenges, some simulations, and then it's just very conversational. And then the charge is go practice what you learned for the next 30 days. And so you start the next session with reflecting on what worked, what didn't work, how what impact did it have, and then we go through and learn some new laws and some new habits.
Now, will you have guests coming in, or is this something you're going to be having?
For this one, there aren't guests. This one I will be leading. But for the one that we have in the afternoon, we do have guests. We had Dr. Hooker that came from Social Circle. We had Dr. Philip Brown from Oconee County High School came and spoke to our high school leaders the last one we had, it was 2 weeks ago. We actually had Jamie Hitzkis come and talk to the elementary leaders, and it was all about culture. And so each month is a different theme. And so looking through next, the 18th, the Thursday before, I was looking at Jeffrey because he films it, we were talking about it. The 18th, we have Dr. Jared Robinson from Madison County coming and talking about planning and assessment. And so for that group, because it's so instructionally focused, it's a blend. I still do some of the work with the mindsets, and we kind of do a mini lesson of sorts to begin. And then we have a guest speaker, and the idea is that guest speaker is also speaking to those not the mindsets, the irrefutable laws, and they're talking about how they apply them. So there's a little bit of conversational, also learning from different perspectives. So we're trying to find a blend between two. But the cohort for our district office will be me facilitating, and very well we'll pull in some other colleagues, but it's
And
going to.
then you make the final choice as far as who is leadership quality?
It's not so much a choice so much as it's almost for them, it's to give it's an extended opportunity for them to showcase their leadership skills. It's an opportunity for them to be able to learn a little bit more about leadership. It's an opportunity for them to be able to network with people outside of their departments. There's no winner, there's no loser, it's building skills and putting tools into your leadership toolbox. So and what it does though is it gets people's names on the radar of human resources. We never knew that person was an aspiring leader. Because honestly, when I sent out the first email, I thought we'd get like 20 people across the district, and we had 177 people saying they were interested in this. It shows you that we have far more people that are interested in these leadership opportunities. For some might be an advancement in transportation department, but for some people it's just, I want to be the department chair at my school. So it's not as if all of them are aspiring to be a principal or assistant principal, or it just depends on where they are on their trajectory. So it's a personal, professional journey in leadership.
Well, and don't you think too, it's helping them to determine if this is something that they want to pursue?
Absolutely, especially when they hear from existing leaders. And they're being very honest about what it means and what it looks like.
I
Absolutely.
mean, if they want to pursue any of these areas, not just in administration, leadership, but just if they want to move up the ranks in whatever program they're in.
Most definitely.
Opportunity for advancement is one of the greatest retention tools that you can have. If you know that you have an opportunity in the future to be able to grow, it keeps people, and so we want to retain the best as well.
The last item I want to mention and then turn it over to Ms. Todd is that I had the distinct pleasure of going to UGA for a portion of my morning to work with the Jackson student leadership team, and it was awesome. They were at the Fanning Institute. So we were just talking about leaders of adults. We have students that are leaders, and we have students that want to know more about leadership. And this was, what was unique is this was not a group where Bo and I are best buds and we're going down to this thing together. It's Bo and I meeting for the first time and all of a sudden being put into a collaborative situation and working through some self-reflection about who I am as a leader. But by the way, I'm a senior in high school, so it was really, really powerful. And the work that the students were doing was they ran through a couple of activities where they had to determine what type of leadership style they have, but they didn't know that that's what they're doing. For instance, there's an activity where you have to choose a circle, a square, a triangle, and a Z, and I won't get into great detail, but I came back and gave Dr. Howard the lesson on it, because once you choose one of those shapes and you get in your group, you find out that they represent different aspects of leadership. Some are more leadership where you like to take more of the lead, some are where you like to do the work, some are more about the people, and some are more about processes. And just listening to the kids talk through that and then sharing out amongst a classroom of people who they don't know that well, the confidence, the courage, the positivity on a rainy, cold day, it was amazing, and it gives you great faith that we're going to be in good hands, because we've got great kids in Jackson County, and when we give them opportunities to do things like that, we talked about disruptions. The JSLT got substantially disrupted last year because you have to do that in person. I mean, there's a lot of things we did in Google and Zoom, but it just is not the same to try to do leadership development amongst students via Zoom. And so they kind of got robbed a little bit of their experience last year, but they're getting a really rich opportunity this year. Kate Wilson is leading that work. Dr. Shannon Lawrence is a partner in that work. I'm partnering in that work, and it was phenomenal. So I would love for them a little later in the year to come and share with y'all and talk a little bit about their experience.
How many do we have in that program this year?
There were 16, and here's always the challenge. These are the kids that also don't want to miss school. So there were 16 there today, but there's a little bit more than that in the group. I think it's right around 24-ish, if I'm not mistaken.
Didn't when we started that, we had a much bigger,
We did.
but I know it's tough with the scheduling and getting everybody, So, well, it's better to have 16 than none, so.
Yeah. And I mean,
Keep working.
you'd be really impressed too. They're phenomenal. So. Ms. Todd, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. I do want to echo two things, about retention and then about the personnel timeline. And Ms. Wheeler, you asked about us bumping things back. If you saw the data that we presented in CPI, 28% of our teachers could retire right now. And so we are going to be very proactive in trying, because what is working against us, unfortunately, is the pipeline coming out of our colleges and universities is not fulfilling the need of a district with 28% of their certified staff potentially retiring. So these efforts of empowering people to be leaders helps with retaining those people, and then we've got to get busy because we know we're going to have some personnel needs in the near future. Speaking of that, you have your personnel recommendation report in front of you. I do not anticipate any changes on Monday, but there might be a couple, because I'm trying my best. If we have vacancies and we can fill them, I want us to fill them. But what you have in front of you is what we know right now. Oh, passing it out. Okay. So that is current as of today, and again, I don't anticipate any changes before Monday, but there might be, and I will appreciate your flexibility there if we need to add some on Monday. The next thing I have for you tonight is an update on our substitutes. And so we have a unique situation that I wanted to bring to your attention, and that is we partner with ESS to fill our subs, and I will tell you that over the past couple of months, they have been extremely supportive and have been working with us diligently in filling our sub needs. And they've had some changes in leadership, and I think they're really trying their best, and they're asking us to kind of look at some data to help them in recruitment efforts. And so that's what I'm bringing to you tonight. The first slide shows you our current state of affairs. So this is our October data that shows you how many active subs we currently have and what our fill rate is. So on average, in the month of October, we had a 75% fill rate,
We really want that to be 90%. That is the goal, that's what ESS wants, and that's what we want. So according to their data, in order to get us back to that 90%, we need to recruit 31 more subs to have on our list, on our active list. And so the next slide will kind of break it down for you in terms of, well, how does this impact us? Basically, in the month of October, we average 240 absences weekly that require a sub. So you'll see sometimes we have absences, but those people don't need a sub. That averages to 50 absences per day. And with our current fill rate, that leaves 14 unfilled absences. So that means there are 14 classrooms in the district that don't have a sub, that principals are having to find coverage for, they're having to split a class, they're having to pull another teacher, and maybe they don't have specials that day in elementary school. And kudos to our principals because they are making it work, and they are making sure that kids are they're doing the best they can to ensure students are getting instruction. I've given you just a graph of a snapshot of today. Just today, our fill rate was at 72%. And so we're on average in November is looking much like October. It's not really, we're not seeing any improvement right now. Next shows you kind of what ESS has been doing. They are starting to pay for the background checks of subs. Previously, a substitute would have to come in and pay $50 to get their background check, and sometimes that's hard to have to pay $50 and you don't even have the job yet. So ESS has asked and said, we're willing to do that if you will bill us at the end of the month. And we said, absolutely. So we are going to partner with them to try to alleviate that burden on some people who might want to sub but don't have $50 to get started. They're also offering lots of incentives, gift card drawings. If you sub a minimum number of days, they put your name in a hat, and ESS is funding those gift cards. They're even doing a Thanksgiving dinner drive. If you sub so many days in Thanksgiving, you're going to win a free turkey. So they're doing what they can do on their end to recruit and keep people actively subbing. They're increasing their presence at community events. They've been out at fall festivals, setting up tables, trying to recruit. The next slide, though, is what I want you to see that we need to help them with, and that is our daily rates of pay versus the surrounding counties. So as you can see on the graph, we have 3 surrounding counties that currently use ESS. Barrow County joined with ESS in August, and this is where we saw our fill rate start to decline. Barrow is currently paying $75 a day plus a $50 daily bonus. So if you sub in Barrow County for one day, you would get $125. If you sub in Jackson County for one day, you get $76. So we have started to see when they pull up absences, they can drive 10 minutes down the road and make more money to sub in a day than they would if they were with us. And as you can see, our rates currently are almost the lowest compared to the districts surrounding us. Banks County is the only one that pays lower than us. So I have a proposal to present this evening because I also want to make sure we're being fiscally responsible. Our surrounding counties aren't facing the deficit that we are. We only need 31 more people. Some of the surrounding counties have a lower fill rate than we do, and they need 50 plus people. So we're not in a situation where we can make a bigger gain than some of the others around us. We only need to get 31 more people and we should be good. And so I want us to be fiscally responsible because as soon as we increase that daily rate, we've increased that daily rate. And I want to make sure that we get the most bang for our buck. Based on the data that I had ESS gather for us from the surrounding counties, the ones that are doing, we'll give you $50 extra every day, it's not really increasing their fill rate. It might for one day, but it doesn't increase that on average throughout the month. So my proposal, our proposal that we're bringing to you this evening, is to do a bonus structure. And so that's the next slide. We would love to honor those subs that are committed to Jackson County, and we can utilize CARES funding to do that right now. This would be a short-term solution, but I think it's a balance of solving the problem and being fiscally responsible. In other words, you would get $150 at the end of the month if you committed and worked 7 full days with us in Jackson County for the month. If you did 14 full days, you'd get an extra $300 at the end of the month. And then my recommendation is to go ahead and increase the daily rate of pay for our certified educators and our long-term certified educators. That would only be increasing those daily rates of pay by about $25 per day, which Anna has assured me we can handle. What we would use for the non-long-term is CARES funding to give those bonuses and see what happens. See if that keeps our current active subs from staying committed to us. See if that helps recruit some more subs to join our team. We only need 31 to get us back where we were. But this is going to be a short-term solution. So I want to show you this today and know that this is a good balance between fiscally responsible and seeing if it can help us solve our problem. But I do think long-term we're going to have to look at increasing those daily rates to align with those of us the counties that are surrounding us. But we can start having those conversations now as we're planning for our budget and be better prepared for that to start a new budget year than to try to do it in the middle of a budget cycle. Any?
Some of our good subs are basically leaving us.
Yes, ma'am.
Where they can make money. I understand. We faced that many years ago when I was an assistant principal.
Yes, ma'am. And so when they pulled the data, though, it was very interesting to me that it like in Barrow County, for example, even though they're paying them that $50 bonus every day, again, it didn't raise their fill rate consistently. It might do it for 1 day, it might do it for 3 days, but it wasn't showing that, oh, we did that and it worked. Our fill rate went way up. And so I don't want us to jump into that, because once you do that, you can't take it back once you put that out there. So I think if we try this and see how it goes for a month or so, and if we see an increase or if we see subs starting to come back to us or more subs signing up to be with us, then I think we've got a good short-term solution and buys us a little bit more time to be able to plan for the future.
And if we're losing some of our local folks to go across the line and make a little more, if we can meet that,
Absolutely.
the chances are they're going to stay home.
Absolutely. And I think this will help. They'll say, well, I can sub for a full week in Jackson and I'll still be getting that bonus at the end of the month. So I would love to try it. Mhm. Okay. Any questions?
I know this is something you've inherited, so I'm trying to formulate my question here. We were sold ESS with almost, I perceived as a guarantee that they were gonna give us 90%. And, we're 70, that's pretty far from 90 in my opinion. So, are they held responsible for any of that at all, or?
They're doing what they can, and I showed you what they're doing. I will say that they have had a change in leadership that I am very encouraged by, if I can word it that way. We have 2 new people. We have a new regional manager, and we have a new person that's assigned just to Jackson County. They have been extremely responsive. Our principals have been impressed with the responsiveness that they're getting. I think that they're doing what they can, but when there's neighboring counties next door that have a higher rate of pay, it's very hard for them to convince them to come to us.
So my question on to that though is, we were filling that percentage. So what's the benefit of us continuing to use them? I think that's, if I was a business owner, that would be my motivation is, okay, the bill of goods I'm sold is not good. And so, if they'd like to come talk to us, I would love to talk to them about that. Because we're.
I think the benefit too, Mr. Hollett, is that We would have to hire a couple of people full-time to be able to manage substitutes if we did it at the district. Yeah, right.
Well, but let me just say, it was very difficult. I've been in those shoes and I've had to do that kind of thing.
Sure.
We have experienced, and I know we can blame everything on COVID, but I think COVID is a big factor in this very thing. We're not the only ones. It's affected our transportation, and so a lot of the folks that do subbing are retired people, or the older, not necessarily retired. And those folks are just not willing anymore to get out there and do what they used to do.
And I hear,
And I can identify.
I hear every excuse there is to hear, but if
Well, I
someone
think that's
comes to me,
reality, not excuses.
it is, but if someone comes to me and says, I'm gonna staff you at this percentage, but then they don't, to me, that's
Well,
not right.
I see what you're saying, but I think we have to consider, I'm not ready to throw the baby out with the
And
bathwater.
I'm definitely not saying that at all, but I think that's something I'm definitely looking at.
Yeah.
If ESS comes and says, hey, I wanna renew this contract or whatever we have,
I would
that's something that I'm gonna keep in mind.
I would agree with you, and I would say that after doing this, if they're saying that the barrier is that surrounding districts are paying more than us, and after we take steps to alleviate that, if we're still not seeing 90% fill rates, then I definitely think we have a conversation on our hands. But I will say I am very impressed with the change of leadership and the response that we're getting, and I'm very hopeful that we're going to be back in those 90%. But I have been meeting with them regularly, and I think they know that what our expectation is. And hopefully, if the board approves this and we offer this and we see an increased fill rate, they know our expectation is to get back to 90%.
Yeah, it might be good if we could have a price comparison.
Absolutely.
Show us what it would cost if it went back in our lap, and what it's costing us to have these folks help us out.
We can definitely look into that for sure.
Can you tell us how much the extra that you're talking about, how much more do you think that's gonna cost us than what we thought we were gonna spend?
Well, so that's hard because the ESS contract is written in a way where, we get billed for the number of subs per month. I would hope we would get those 31 extra subs, so we would see that increase and we would not have the 14 absences out there. So I guess if you take the 14 absences times your $76 a day and then add on those bonuses, we've budgeted for a 90% fill rate, so I don't know that it would impact the $76 daily rate. The bonuses would come out of CARES funds, and so I guess our goal would be that we are paying, monthly bonuses every month for those subs that are being committed to us. I don't know that I can give you a hard answer, but I know that at the end of the month, we'll definitely have a report to let you know this is how much we paid out in bonuses. This is what our fill rate looked like. This is how many unfilled absences we have. And I think that data will show us whether it was effective or not, and if we want to continue it. The good news about it being a bonus is it's not permanent.
Right.
We can try it, see what happens. If it doesn't work, then we're not committed to it. We haven't amended our contract with them.
And it's also fortunate that we have some CARES Act money.
Yes, ma'am.
That we can give this a trial run with.
Yes, ma'am. Again, I feel like it's the most fiscally responsible way to solve a problem in the short term.
Well, we need the substitute, so.
Yes.
I mean, we need to do what we need to do.
It's impossible for our folks out there, trying to juggle, and it's just, I'm totally in favor of us giving this a shot.
Thank you. Last thing I have is just some additional personnel requests, and these are based, the first one is based on growth. West Jackson Elementary School is requesting to add a 50%, a half-time special education teacher. And this is due to 3rd and 4th grade growth in their special education students. They were projected to have 4 academic segments in 3rd grade, and they are currently at 9 segments. In fourth grade, they were projected to have 13 segments, and they're currently at 17 segments. They're making it work, as they do, because they are wonderful, awesome problem solvers. But with the board's blessing, we would love to be able to offer them the opportunity to add a halftime teacher to come in and relieve some of the pressure off of the other teachers that are trying to pick up additional students. And as you know, with special education, trying to keep those class sizes as small as possible is really the goal.
Well, haven't we had a lot of growth with special needs?
Yes, ma'am.
A lot of growth.
So that's what had, you know.
Yes, ma'am. And again, this was, yes, ma'am. Projected, we were at 4, and then now all of a sudden we're at 9. So, and I would assume that would even grow as we continue to see our enrollment go up. The second request is,
Any
oh, I'm
questions
sorry.
about that?
I have a question about the second one.
Sure.
So
So
no questions about the special education? Okay.
The second one is the request from our technology department. Currently on the current organizational chart, the system analyst position is vacant. And so Mr. Thomason, and I'll let you speak because you will be able to speak the technology language, is asking, previously we discussed filling that position in July with the next fiscal year. He would like to go ahead and post and fill that position due to the efforts that he is focusing on cybersecurity. And it's become a priority, and filling that position now instead of waiting longer will allow him to start working on getting all of those systems updated and ready. And we would be able to utilize CARES funding for a portion of that salary because of the cybersecurity component.
Mr. Hollett, we'll give you the floor first. You mentioned it.
That's okay.
So, my concern is, anytime we use CARES money, something that's gonna be not a temporary thing, it's gonna be a permanent thing, where's it gonna come from next time?
Right. So we had already discussed, projected that we were going to fill this position next year. So it is already in the budget planning for next year. We're just asking to do it a little bit earlier to help Mr. Thomason get the cybersecurity and all of that off the ground and running now, because it is such an important task.
I like that answer.
Yeah. Aim to please, Mr. Hollett. I aim to please.
It needs to come as quick as we can. I'm on the Jackson County site watching this. I just got on Northeast Georgia Research site. We can't get on because they've sent over 1 million computers hitting our website and jamming it and it goes down. Ask over for it. Much money they have to spend for cybersecurity. I can't tell you what kind of mess we went through. I think we need to do this as soon as we can. I don't want to see anybody go through what we did.
Schools are targets right now.
Yeah. And especially since you got CARES money and you also got GSBA to pay the first $250,000.
When you have the DOE come to you and say, the CIA and the FBI and the NSA have come to them to let them know that school systems are a major target,
Yes.
that lends a little bit of concern to you. Yes, sir. I agree.
Do we not
Yes,
have
ma'am.
hard backups? Are we backing up on tapes? Are we not?
We are backing up, yes. Yes, we are.
It's the corruption of your system.
Sure.
Every day.
But every night, what we do anyway is we swap the tape every night. And that way, if we are corrupt or whatever, I always have a way to get the important.
Exactly. You know, it's interesting, those companies are well-known, those groups that are doing that, and they always get around all that. I think the only way that we've been able to save these days is through the cloud.
That's where our backups are. Yes, sir. We back up to the cloud, and it's encrypted.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So this analyst position,
Yes, sir.
if I may ask, you didn't fund it, we're gonna fund it next time, we're gonna fund it this time with CARES. Is
Thank you. Is this gonna be their permanent focus? Is it gonna be cybersecurity?
This position will allow me to transfer some responsibilities, some current responsibilities around, so I can create a cybersecurity team in the department. So yes, there will be a permanent position for cybersecurity related duties, yes.
So team usually means more than just me. So is that something we need to be prepared for?
This
Okay.
position will allow.
Mr. Hall is gonna ask me this, and
We anticipate when we bring your org charts, the revised org charts, that all of that will be reflected in those, on that personnel timeline. So any changes to the structure of any department will be a part of those organizational charts that we'll bring you.
I already called Mr. Claris here.
Okay. Good to know.
Streamline it. Is that what you're saying?
You'll thank me later.
I will.
Like to prep some of this, sorry.
All right, thank you. Good questions, great updates and understanding. Mr. Gilbert and team.
Well, good evening. Mr. Patton's going to start us off on some things, but I wanted to mention something first, a couple of things. One is big thanks to Mr. Nicholson for that leadership development project. I think that's going to be incredibly helpful for all of our operational team members. It's something that's been lacking for a long time, and I just think it's going to be encouraging to those people and helpful to us as a district in the long run. The next thing I just want to mention was we talk every month about facilities because there are items every month to talk about, but school nutrition, Ms. Thorpe is back here, she's been off and running since she joined us and has just done a phenomenal job at plugging into every area where there's need. So hats off to you. Thank you very much for that. Mr. Farmer, you heard from last time, and I'm not going to give him the microphone right now, but his team also. I know Mr. Claris, he wanted you to speak. But their team today, as well as facilities, did a great job in terms of just being flexible, jumping in and making things happen that had to happen in spite of the problems we encountered this morning. So thanks to you guys, even though we don't mention those departments every single month. And with that, Mr. Patton, you want to lead us on a couple of them?
Obviously, don't mind handing it to me, right? We'll start off with the project report and Empower. First thing on there is going to stay on there for a little while. The administrative area reconfiguration, that's kind of on hold until we get some other projects wrapped up. Parking lot restriping was completed, and the exterior paint punch list, that's really all we like on phase 2 at the moment. And weather permitting, they're planning on having a big weekend this weekend and hopefully get that wrapped up. Middle school on Skelton, advertisements went out today. So we are on track for that, for bids to be in on the 9th, and hopefully have a good GMP on the 17th. The East Jackson High School Stadium turf, we've got a executive summary attached that we'll talk about in just a second. So you can kind of see some dates there on that one. And then I threw in the locker room renovations. We haven't talked about that. That's a project we've been working on through the year that really turned out pretty cool for them. We did their field house locker room first, and now we're working on the ones in the gym. They look good. At North Operations Site, we've got subsurface investigations. They actually start next week. So we'll hopefully have that wrapped up, and if everything comes back good, we should be maybe closing before the end of the year. In Chamber of Commerce, moving into Empower, Lindsay Pope, who's the architect currently at Empower, we've contracted with them on the design work for that, and the first concept's due the first of the month, and our target on that is still summer completion. So we feel pretty confident with that right now. The upcoming projects list is the same as it was last week. I moved actually 2 of them up. So we're working on those at the moment. And then just threw a few pictures on there. Empower parking lot. I put Jackson County High School's lockers on there because we finally got them in. They were delayed for quite some time and turned out great. And then you can see the before and after of the east locker rooms. And the new bandstand for East Jackson High School, and they both came in. We haven't gotten the other one put together yet, but it looks good. They were really excited. Does anybody got any questions on that? Yeah, those really turned out great.
Really nice.
Yeah, they're jam up. So that executive summary. Oh, we had the funding report. I didn't go through it, but
It was just the standard funding
Yeah.
report. I think there was only one pay request included.
so really, due to time frame and trying to get this project accelerated for a summer completion, wanted to go ahead and bring this one to you for approval of. We've engaged with Southern A&E now. They've kind of started some preliminary work on design on that, and then we'd like to go ahead and approve the budget of $2 million at the moment to go ahead and get that started. And talking with Field Turf, if there's any shot of doing it this summer, we've got to get our order in by January. So we want to go ahead and get that moving to have an opportunity to hopefully get that done.
Up to 2 million, it may not
Yes.
be that much.
No, hopefully. If everything goes really smooth, we don't have the asphalt on the track, if everything's good, we should be significantly under that.
Now, didn't we talk about once before about sometimes when they install this, it will cause some problems with the track and we have to do something?
So we will redo the rubber on the track, but hopefully the asphalt will be,
Will be okay. So we don't have to
yes,
do-
yes.
About how long, if weather permits, how long will it take them to complete this?
So if we can start the morning after graduation, or as soon as they can clean the field off that night, I've asked the school to, if they could, push football games out of August to make sure that so their first 2 games, their first 2 home games, they'll play away to give us a couple of extra weeks to make sure we can get it in.
So if the weather is permitting, then we're gonna need June and July,
And
part of August.
about half of August, yeah.
And I guess the folks there understand, that kind of time frame and making plans, so it's not gonna interfere with.
Absolutely.
They've already got scheduled.
Yes, ma'am. That's really part of the other importance of getting that ordered now. So we maintain on top of the list, and for us, I wouldn't even, the way things are nowadays, I wouldn't even start turning dirt until everything's on site.
Yeah. I know in the past, they've had, in the summer, they'd have different little camps for the students. So I guess that's gonna have to be relocated or.
Practice field.
Yeah, I was gonna say, somewhere else.
Yeah. They'll still be able to do it at East High, but they'll just be on the grass fields, on one of the 3 practice fields.
So they're good, football team's good with this from the preseason
They-
activities, preseason.
In practice, chances are they'll have to be totally on their practice fields, so they're good with that.
Yeah, they were. They're really excited about getting it in, and it's just the time frame on those is so, it's just really tough with sports being year-round now, but they see the benefit, and they're good.
So what's the Southern A&E fee on this one? Is it 5?
6. It's 6.
6% of $2 million?
Yes. Of the total cost, not the 6%, yeah. 6% of the cost of the project, up to $2 million, yes.
Can we talk about that after the meeting? Sure. Have dialogue? Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions? Because we need to take action. This is set for action on Monday night, getting them rolling, so, okay. All right, good.
The next item we want to share with you is not an action item. It's a list as an executive summary for you, but it essentially is a list of current projects that we've talked with the board about over the last couple of meetings. But we added dollars, and these are very approximate dollars in many cases. Some they're very close. And this is not that we do everything on this list. There's some items on this list that are either or. But we wanted to give you a sense to begin to think about the projects with the dollars attached so that you can see, generally speaking, how we would use the approximate $33 million that we have to spend. This list is about double that. But there are some items on here that are already underway, such as the East Jackson turf field we just talked about. Those dollars are on there. And if you go further down to the bottom, you'll see the North Remote Operations Center. That's a $307,000 purchase price, I believe. And there's some extra money in there that we're using for subsurface investigation and that sort of thing. We'll need more funds there once we begin to develop that site. The Sterling property is ready to close. You approved both of these purchases last month, and will close this month. The Chamber of Commerce is under a memo of understanding I'm not sure that's complete, but I know we've talked about it at length, and those dollars will be required. Some of the other ones are, in fact, all the other ones are future projects. We've given you kind of a look at what if during these times of growth we went to permanent classrooms, what that would entail. And to give you kind of an example of that would be maybe the West Jackson Elementary 2-story classroom addition. It's essentially classrooms only, some restrooms on each level, elevator and stairs, a couple of offices. And the idea being that as we grow and before we potentially can have a middle school that we would need classrooms. So we've left dollars in here as well for portable classrooms if we need to do that. We may need to do a little of both. We just aren't sure yet. But all of us desire for our kids to be in permanent classrooms if we can do that. Everything on here is contingent on what Mr. Patton shared earlier about the bid coming on the middle school. Our budget was originally, construction budget, about $25 million. We went up to 28. This includes the design fees and contingencies and that sort of additional related cost. We think, as we've shared, that it's going to be considerably higher, but we're working to that end, and we'll see what we come up with on bid day. These, as everyone knows, are really volatile times. And Mr. Johnson and I were talking about before the meeting how the latest news we have on pricing is that steel is going up. Concrete and masonry units are going up, so maybe not at the pace they were, but still pretty difficult. So we give you this list, not again as an action item, but just to begin to ponder that once we have the dollars in next month, we'll begin then to come back to you and say, if not this, or if this. Whatever works out, then we'll come and give you recommendations on what we think would be a good priority. It's obviously the board's decision on what that priority will be. Everything's important. We wish we could do it all, but this tells us that the next general obligation bond referendum is very, very important to us to be able to keep up with the growth. Any questions at this point on this list or what we have on it?
I'm good, I'll just talk loud. I think all I wanna say is, for us, as board members, when these bids come back, I'm not super hopeful. So, we're gonna have to move pretty quick on what our kind of next steps are, and there's been discussion, staff's been working through this, so when they come back, probably would do us some good maybe to start having some discussions so everybody understands what that's all about, if that makes sense. Because there'll be a couple tough decisions.
Tough decisions to make.
We're trying to do that preliminary work as best we can to be ready. Some of it we can't, but we're doing our best on that.
Ted, I would add too, if you don't mind, just that reminder for the whole board that Mr. Clarsey and Ms. Wheeler spent some time with the growth committee, so we got some feedback from our community as well. And that was the beginning of October, so we're synthesizing that feedback as well as what we're able to do. So when we bring you some recommendations, it will be with a little bit more of a comprehensive perspective, and we want to share that with those folks as well.
The next item on the list is two parcels that are near this site right now. There's about 12 acres across the road behind the Boys and Girls Club. There's another 15 acres plus on the low side of this property, primarily beyond the field in the back. We are asking you in a resolution to declare that these properties are surplus and no longer needed for educational purposes, and that you would allow the superintendent to come up with the means of marketing those properties. We think in the long term, as we know about this building, that revenue source would be very vital to us for the other work we have planned. And that'll be an action item on Monday night. And then the last one is a resolution. We're also asking for Monday night approval that we would request from the Georgia Department of Education a 1-year extension on the 5-year facilities plan. We have done all of the work for the most part. We've upgraded all of our costs for renovations, modifications, new buildings. But we, in our discussions with the board members, with staff, with the parent advisory board, with the teacher advisory board, with the growth committee, we are in a period of time where it's very difficult to peg exactly what we're going to do. So we think we'll have a much better chance 1 year later to more comprehensively plan. The district is committed to spending this next year, not to kick it down the road, but to really spend this next year deciding what's best for students and what we can afford best. There are no negative implications, and this recommendation really came from our Georgia DOE facilities representative, Deborah Robertson. I think it's the wisest thing to do right now. So, and if I'm not mistaken, that concludes the operations section. There's good news, and I won't steal it, but I will. SPLOST report's really good.
Yes, it is. You can steal it any time, Ted. And as I mentioned, our finance team is not here, but they're representing well at GASBO. So I'll share with you, we did have a good SPLOST report, and it was down month over month, but year over year it continues to increase. 975 is pretty impressive, and if we continue at that rate, we're going to get closer to meeting those goals. So you can see there that we're in a real good place, and that's a really good timing. We've got here our general fund comparison, which I think is really important. Remember that we still have CARES funds represented in our general fund, so that's part of the reason that you see our fund balance still, even at this point, at $12 million. Friendly reminder to our board, it's been 6 years since we've had to take out a TAN, and that's a really good place to be. And normally this time of year, we're counting down the minutes until we start getting tax revenue, but we're still in a very good place. And and keep in mind, we shifted our bus lease payment, which is $1 million payment, or $980,000. That was paid this past month, and that was paid out of general. And prior to this year, we've had to pay that out of SPLOST. And so we're sticking to our commitment to reducing payments out of SPLOST that we can absorb in the general fund, so that we reserve those SPLOST funds primarily for building space for students. That's our priority with that money. Oops, and I closed out. Let me go back. You have there as well our general operating monthly financials, which continue to be in good shape. Go back to that. Here we go. Again, we are about 18%, we're, again, 33% of the year through, but we will start to see our tax revenues coming here pretty quickly because that's December, January is our collection time that we will see the impact there. But again, still in a really, really good place there. So the reason, again, you see those difference in the fund balance is our new charts as required by the legislation is you've got encumbered expenses that are represented there. So, but our imbalance is still right at 12.3. So celebrations continue on behalf of our financial front, and that's a good place for us to be, considering how much work we have ahead of us. So outside of that, that's all the comments that we have. And thank you, board, for your patience as we had a lengthy meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. We do have a need for an executive session to discuss real estate and personnel. So if do we need a kind of motion to go into executive session? So I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. All in favor? That's unanimous. We're going to go to executive session, and we'll be back shortly.
Love, is that? We've returned from executive session. Do I have a motion to come out of executive session? So I have a motion. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? That'd be unanimous. Our work session is adjourned. I'd like to convene a called meeting for an action item. And I don't need a motion, just convene the meeting, right? Okay. So we'll go into a called meeting, I guess 7:55, for one action item. The action item is the approval of the agreement with King and Cooper to secure their services as our search firm for a superintendent. They came and presented, as you guys remember, and we've discussed. So any questions? Any discussion? Do I have a motion to approve? So I have a motion to approve the agreement with King and Cooper. Do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. That's unanimous. That's our only action item, so we stand adjourned on our called meeting. Thank you, everybody.